Monson did not sleep much that night. Taurus and their midnight encounter seemed from a different time, a different world, but strangely on the forefront of his mind. His brain knew that there were other, more important, more horrible things to consider, but it just could not quite force itself to do so. He attempted to relieve himself of the burden. He tried TV, reading, surfing Facebook 2.0, anime, and everything else that might distract him from his thoughts and feelings that were steadily growing more prevalent. His mind had gone through an emotional root canal, and the Novocaine seemed to be wearing off. It fell upon him with a heavy weight in that dark and trying time. If he did not find something to occupy his thoughts, he might just go mad.
It is not your fault.
Dawn's voice drizzled over him like the pull of slow-moving warm water. Monson spoke aloud, too tired to think to do otherwise. You don't know that, Dawn. Something happened on that bridge. Something that only I survived. The logical conclusion is that I'm somehow responsible, or at least involved. Monson felt Dawn's conviction as he answered.
No, Monson. It was like Grayson and Marie said. You are the hero of this story. Whatever happened on that bridge, I am sure you did everything in your power to stop it.
Monson's voice rose slightly. You don't understand, Dawn. I have evil within me. I can feel it in those times of power.
All men have evil in them, Monson Grey. That's what it means to be mortal. It is to live as a walking contradiction, pulled by both the light and the darkness. All mortals have evil, just like all mortals have good.
A feeling of warmth encircled him. He suddenly felt the full load of his exhaustion. He yawned as he lied against the bed. Dawn continued speaking.
Be thankful that you have good and evil, because it means that you are mortal.
You eat human. Monson fell asleep, even before the words were out of his mouth. Dawn's voice sounded heavy.
No, I did not.
He, Monson Grey, almost kissed Taurus freaking Green. Monson stood at his mirror in the wee hours of the morning with an entirely new perspective, despite having only caught an hour or so of sleep. He did not know what happened on Barty Bridge, but he felt determined to find out. If he was somehow responsible, he would take whatever punishment the law, and or God, if there truly was one, would give him. He left the subject simmering in the back of his head, giving him some much-needed distance. Not that his head was silent. Just now he could count on not sleeping for a whole new reason. Taurus weighed heavily on his mind. What had happened? Between his revelations concerning himself and Taurus's absolutely bizarre behavior, he found that his thoughts were a mess of images and emotions. It was so confusing. As he continued to consider Taurus and her behavior, he felt that if he tried to think too much about the other stuff, he would simply lose his mind. He wondered idly if he would ever be able to reconcile her extreme shifts in personality. 1 minute, she was as high as a kite, floating on air without a care in the world. Next, she was melancholy and forlorn, like she had misplaced something near and dear to her heart. There was just no way to understand her opposites. He seriously did not know what to do. A voice echoed in the back of his mind. He was happy to realize that it was his own. You don't know the real Taurus. Monson nodded his agreement. That was certainly true. He had caught glimpses of her. He swore he did. He wondered what it would take to pull the real one out for an extended period of time. She's hiding something. He knew that also. But what and why? Would he ever know? He doubted it. With another sigh, he readied himself for the day. He was obsessing, and that was just not healthy. He showered, taking longer than he would have normally, using the extra time to try to drown his tiredness in the steaming water. After his shower, he made his way to the front room, retrieving some fruit, a power bar, and a bottle of Evian. He sat for a moment, eating, drinking, and thinking. It was no use. Sitting around was not going to accomplish anything. He needed to get out and about, find something to take his mind off things. Then, it came to him. A workout. He would go for a morning workout. Monson changed at top speed, donning a hoodie and shorts. He proceeded out of his apartment and went straight to Artorias and Casey's room. Not surprising, they were not up. "What's up, fellas?" Monson popped open their door. "Get up and come spar with me."
"Gray, is that you?"
Casey rubbed the sleep from his eyes. Monson considered for a glorious instant that he would give Casey the same airborne treatment that he was so used to receiving, but then thought better of it. Casey was already awake, which caused the prospect to lose some of its luster. It was awfully hard to defend yourself in midair. "Of course it's me." Monson flipped on the lights. "Who else is going to come barging into your room at this hour?"
"Dude, what time is it?"
Casey groaned as he looked at the clock.
"Are you freaking kidding me? Look at the time, Gray. Come back in a couple of hours when you've had time to realize how bad a beating you're going to get for waking me up."
"You're one to talk." Monson started flipping the light on and off, just to spite him. "You'd better hurry and get up, or I'm not going to tell you what happened with Taurus last night." That got his attention.
"You sure know how to make an entrance, Gray."
Artorias entered the room, hearing Monson and Casey's commotion. Monson burst into laughter, as Artorias was wearing a full-length, one-piece set of PJs.
"Arthur!"
Monson gave him a quick look up and down.
"What in the world are you wearing?"
Artorias glanced down sharply, then back up at Monson with a very scornful look on his face. Monson and Casey lost it.
"Amazing."
Monson doubled over, holding his stomach.
"I think I can die a happy man now."
The laughter went on longer than it would have normally, the three of them being so slap-happy that early in the morning. Finally, they regained control of themselves. Casey and Artorias changed, and they started out the door.
"Wait."
Monson cut both Casey and Artorias off as they started to speak at the same time. He knew exactly what they were going to say, so he thought it would be wise to interrupt them before they got started. He wanted to make sure they were well out of the building before he gave any details. They both gave Monson an exasperated expression, but held their silence. Bokens in hand, Artorias and Casey grabbed power bars from the vending machine on the bottom floor before they started towards the GM, specifically one of the smaller, all-purpose rooms where they knew they would not be disturbed.
"Okay, Gray."
Artorias looked over his shoulder, just to make sure they were not overheard, despite knowing perfectly well that they were alone.
"Spill it. You, Taurus, and your romantic encounter. Details, man, details."
Monson smiled at the sense of excitement that was radiating from his two friends. They truly looked like two kids that were about to run buck wild in a candy store. He wasted no time giving them a blow-by-blow interpretation of the prior evening's experience, and was met with enthusiastic oohs and ahs the entire time. While he did leave out the details about the light show and Taurus's business, he told them about the strange history of Corn Valley and about his failed kiss attempt. Of course, they were well aware of the first part. He should have thought of that. However, they stared at him dumbstruck once the discussion turned to kissing. Even with the omitted portions of the story, Monson took a while to tell them exactly what had happened. Casey and Artorius, the good friends that they were, probably would have accepted a Cliff's Note version, but Monson decided that a full accounting would not only save him from retelling the whole story later, but it also alleviated some of his mounting guilt caused by holding his tongue concerning some of the more sensitive information. By the time he had finished his narrative, they arrived at the GM. "I'm totally serious, dude," said Casey, with another one of those odd expressions as the boys moved quietly through the sets of double doors. "I'm so gonna make a movie of your life. The simple melodrama alone would be enough. We'd make millions. You and Taurus, a moonlight rendezvous in a glittering cave, a failed kiss. I can see it now. You know the ladies would eat that crap up." "And Artorius," Monson chuckled stupidly, passing a furtive look at Artorius, who seemed deep in thought. "We all know how he loves the chick flicks." "Who would play me?" said Artorius, choosing to ignore Monson's teasing. "I get to choose. That's the only way I'll participate." Monson and Casey actually stopped mid-stride at his pronouncement. "Well?" Artorius' voice rose defensively. "Come on, the person who plays you is critical. What if they got some ugly dude to play me?" "Okay, I'll bite. Why would that be important?" "I'd forever be associated with the guy. We can't have that. I do have an image and reputation, after all." Monson decided not to touch that one. It was too easy. "So, who would play you?" He doubted he would recognize anyone that Artorius named. "That blonde guy from Lord of the Rings. I forget his name. The really handsome one. He's been in a lot of films lately." "Arthur, there is no way that Orlando Bloom would play you. Dude, he's like in his mid-30s, and you're a freaking redhead," said Casey before Monson had the opportunity to ask. "And why would you want him?" "Because he's a good actor, and all the girls still think he's hot." Artorius looked around regally. "He would best play the man that is Artorius Payne." "You mean Arthur Payne?" Casey tried to stifle his laughter. "How many times, Cassius? How many times?" "Wait." Monson cut across both of them. "Do you guys hear that?" The three boys were standing in the northern portion of the building, down a long corridor near the entrance to the basements. All three of them stood motionless, listening. Listening for music? "What is that?" Casey's ears perked up as he leaned into Monson. Monson spoke without thinking. "It sounds like a dance version of Strange Conditions' new single. I can't remember what it's called." He and Artorius gaped at Monson. "What?" "It's that show, I'm telling you, so you think you can dance. It warms my soul, man. Makes me happy." Casey laughed. "Gray, you never cease to amaze me. You know that?" "Where do you think it's coming from?" "Let's go find out." Monson motioned to the source of the music. Hoping to head off any argument from Artorius, he added, "Relax. We're allowed to be here. We aren't breaking any rules. I checked with Brian." "Are you sure?" He sounded unconvinced. "I don't know. This area looks questionable to me." "It'll be fine, bro. What's the worst that could happen?" Artorius grimaced. "I hate it when you say that." The three of them moved slowly up the hall toward the source of the music, navigating the unbelievable amount of clutter in their path. Casey gestured annoyed. "Where the frick is facility management when you need them?" As they came closer, echoes of voices radiated, bouncing through the hall. The sound seemed to be coming from behind a large metal door at the very end of the corridor. A small window at the top of the door was absolutely no help in identifying the source, as a thin layer of dust and grime caked it, making it impossible to see inside. "What do you think?" Monson glanced over at Casey and Artorius. "Let's just get this over with." Casey merely nodded. The door squeaked as it opened, though any noise died in the blast of music that shrapnelled from the room, assaulting the three boys with hot flecks of sound. They entered, hoping not to disturb the occupants. What they saw came as a complete surprise. Monson, Notorious, and Casey were now standing in the shadowy outer gallery of an enclosed viewing space. The speaker attached to a wall on their right was blasting music, with lighted words "Studio" lit up right under it. To their left, a number of chairs sat outside a large window, this one clean, that gave an unimpeded view to a mid-sized dance studio, complete with wraparound mirror. They could not see fully inside, however, as the dull lights that lit the interior of the inner room hardly accomplished their assigned task. Next to this window was a door with another lighted sign, which led up a staircase to a second floor. Matching where the door was with what they could see through the window, it was obvious that the stairway led to a viewing area that overlooked the practice room down below. At the far end of the room, two people seemed to be warming up for something. The girl had her hair pulled back in a blue-white bandana, concealing a mountain of dark hair. She wore a black long-sleeve shirt, together with black stretchy booty shorts that emphasized strong, tanned legs. The boy sported a bright red headband and tank top, with white warm-up pants. Both were stretching in front of the floor-to-ceiling full-length mirror. The girl sat in the splits, gripping her foot with both hands, while the boy performed a series of leg lifts, throwing his limb into the air so it would touch his forehead. From where the three boys stood, the dim lighting made it impossible to identify either of the individuals. The music was starting to die down, the song quickly ending. Noticing this, Monson rapidly and silently pointed up the stairs. Casey and Notorious gave each other a questioning look, but followed as Monson started to climb. Not wanting to draw attention to themselves, they slowly and carefully moved up the stairs. The landing looking over the dance floor was not very large, just a small balcony where spectators could watch the practice in comfort. The music restarted with the simple keystrokes of a grand piano.
"Gray,"
said Casey quietly, with confusion.
"what are we doing here? I don't know."
Which was perfectly true.
"I'm just curious, that's all."
"And I see why." Notorious was transfixed on the two below. "You're not going to believe this." He pointed. Face still obscured by the lack of light, the girl made her way to the middle of the dance floor, stepping lightly with graceful movements. She took up her first position in the exact center of the floor, breathing deeply with her head bowed. She held this pose for a tense moment before stepping forward up on her toe. She swayed in concert with the gentle strokes of the piano.
"Huh, a contemporary piece."
Monson watched, his eyes following the soft movements of the girl.
"What's that?" "It's a type of dance,"
answered Monson, distracted.
"Often it tells a story with movement. You're supposed to feel your way through the movements. Come on, Hollywood man. Haven't you ever heard of Mia Michaels?"
Casey raised his eyebrow. Monson just rolled his eyes.
"Anyway, the contemporary style is great. They can be really powerful pieces."
And powerful it was. Violins joined the piano with movements of bows that were long and tender. Slight gestures of fluttering fingers flowed within the course of music, encircling all who watched with the power of her actions. Other instruments added richness and complexity, eventually increasing the pace of the music, and with it, the dance. The girl flittered toward the far side of the floor in a way that almost seemed like an accident. Her body was quickly becoming a whirlwind of action, with powerful leaps and acrobatic spins. She moved with all the conviction and freedom of a wild animal. It was masterful and inspiring, all while maintaining an unforced disposition. It was all natural, remaining carefully within the lines and flow of the music. Suddenly, an abrupt movement called attention to the boy, who up until now was out of the picture. It was understandable. Monson was so focused on the girl that there did not seem to be time for anyone else. His focus on the boy was brief as the girl was now deepening her movements, making long sweeping motions with her arms and legs. Frenzied kicking legs began as the music built to its all-encompassing climax. Meanwhile, on the other side of the floor, the girl's partner took up a stance and remained completely stationary. Attention shifted back to the girl just as she completed a set of delicate turns. All seemed to stop around her, the force of her story and its wonder dulling the senses. He tried to keep his focus. This girl, it was as if she was abandoning herself and all that freedom she had gained in the violence of her struggle. She was going to throw it all away. But for what? Monson attempted to find the answer, as it seemed very significant. He did not find that answer. The girl turned on one foot, now a great distance away from her partner. She ran towards him, all conviction and inhibition lost. In a flash, she neared him and with a final thrust, tossed herself in the air, colliding right as the music reached its peak. Monson gasped. To him, it was like the lines that defined the two dancers as separate people seemed to fade, bringing a wealth of new emotions and possibilities. They melted together as one, still separate, but ever connected. This abandonment told Monson that he, that boy, was her rock, her foundation, meant not only for support, but for enlightenment. He was everything. Her everything. The three boys held back a breath of anticipation, as for an instant, all seemed well between the two dancers. They just stood there, the boy cherishing the closeness and the girl hanging on for dear life. Then something seemed to break in their emotional connection, and with it, their physical stability. The boy crumpled. He tumbled backwards, falling on his butt and taking her with him. A splash of light highlighted what was, until then, unseen. Monson finally recognized the girl. Cyan? He breathed to himself. He was at an absolute loss for words. Dude, is that how I think it is? Said Casey, his voice reflecting Monson's own thoughts. That couldn't be the elder Harrison, could it? I think it is. Artorius strained on tiptoes to get a better look. I didn't know she could be that feminine. I've never seen anything like that, and coming from Cyan, it's just... Hello? Is someone there? Said a voice sounding from below. The three boys ducked as they realized that they had been talking a lot louder than they intended. What is it, Cyan? Said a fruity voice. I thought I heard someone on the balcony. Cyan sounded as calm as ever. Boston, you don't think someone's been watching us, do you? Casey mouthed. Boston Timberland? No way. He then put his finger in his mouth, indicating his desire to vomit, or at least pretend to. Boston did not miss a beat. They heard him spin around on the balls of his feet. Cyan, really? Could you blame them? Monson could actually hear the cocky grin in the boy's voice. I mean, who wouldn't want to watch? Yeah, especially that last part. Monson could still not see him, but when Boston spoke next, Monson could tell that he was very flushed. Cyan did have that effect on people. Shall we take it from the top? Said Cyan, apparently losing interest in whatever she had heard. We don't have much time left, and we got a lot of work to do. Cyan, I have to admit that I'm surprised that you could be this artistic. Monson and the others peeked over the banister. Boston stepped closer to her. This piece is very powerful. I'm impressed. I live to impress, said Cyan with just a touch of sarcasm. She quickly adjusted her tone.
I'm glad you like it all the same.
I don't doubt that, said Boston, speaking with overemphasized suspense. He took another step closer to her. The truth is, I find you intriguing, if not a little bit implacable.
Really?
Cyan's voice remained even, but a bit on the hard side.
And why do you say that?
The whole renegade chick thing. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm all for the mysterious when it comes to parties and circus acts. Boston glanced at the full-length mirror, staring at his reflection. He adjusted his headband. But there's really no need for that to attract people's attention. Your looks already do that.
I'm flattered. I didn't know.
Cyan stood totally stationary.
But whose attention do you think I'm trying to attract?
Now, Cyan, why ask questions you know the answer to? He gave her a suave smile, then continued, I am a bit confused at your preceding choice in friends and boyfriends. I mean, I guess I sort of understand the diamond. I suppose he's popular and not all that bad-looking, and certain alternatives weren't available to you at the time. But that freshman brat, the scholarship boy who looks like a walking corpse, why would you waste your time on someone that is obviously beneath you? A beautiful woman should be with a beautiful man, someone who is worthy of such grandeur. He took a third step towards her, then smoothly placed his hand on the small of her back, drawing her closer to him. I'm just glad that you came to your senses. And now that I've taken care of my little obligation,
we don't need to waste any more time.
His lips slightly puckered. He slowly drew her into him, pulling her hair out of the bandana that held it bound. Monson attempted to jump over the edge, completely ignoring the fact that it would have been a 12-foot drop. Lucky for him, Casey and Notorious were there to stop him.
No, Grey.
Casey clung to Monson, trying to whisper.
You can't. Besides breaking your leg, dude. Do you want Cyan to know you were watching? She'll kill us.
Monson was not listening, but rather muttering to himself.
You pompous jumped-up jack.
In one massive motion, Casey, Monson, and Notorious flinched back. Smack! Cyan landed her hand squarely across Boston's cheek, fully, firmly, and with total conviction. Boston recoiled from the solid blow.
Boston,
said Cyan, her voice going very quiet.
It would be imprudent to speak of someone who you do not know, or try things of that nature with someone like me.
Boston acted as if a 10-ton truck plowed through his living room. He was angry, humiliated, and shocked all at the same time. He had not expected Cyan to strike him. That much was painfully obvious. Awkward silence followed, causing some of the arrogance to evaporate from Boston. Cyan simply looked at him. He cleared his throat.
Sorry. No harm done.
Cyan turned from him.
And I'm sorry I slapped you.
Can I ask you a question? Cyan nodded. Okay, most of the boys in this school would bend over backwards for just a moment of your time, a kind word, a simple gesture of acknowledgement. Why then spend time with that freshman, a freshman of no social standing, wealth, talent, or culture? A freshman with absolutely nothing to offer you. Cyan ran a hand through her dark hair.
No social standing or wealth? You do know that Monson Grey inherited a 1/3 share of the Barty conglomerate, right?
Boston's unsure words plainly said that he did not know that. Not surprising. It was not like Monson walked around with a sign on his back that said, "One of the richest people in the world." Boston started again. I knew it had to be something. If he's got that much money, Cyan cut him off. You just don't get it, do you? No, I suppose I don't. If it's not the money, I don't get it. What could you possibly see in him? Okay, I understand he's mildly intelligent, but come on, Cyan. Not a single guy friend in 2 years? I've watched you, you know. Why now? Why him? Boston... Cyan spun on the spot, her blue eyes boring into his. Have you ever had a near-death experience? What? Boston blanched in discomfort. No, of course not. I doubt that many people have ever. I have. Cyan carefully interrupted him. Over and over again in my dreams. I fall into a place of the purest white, where the clouds don't just cling to the rooftops, but are a part of them. It's like heaven itself created a special place for my family and I. But little did I know that heaven is on another cloud, in another dream. What's left to me, Boston, are stares of nameless, horribly disfigured people, and echoes of blood-curdling screams. My peace of mind is constantly being tested, and my fortitude at times is almost gone. I know no relief, and in this, I was always alone. Until he came. Now, you want to know what I see in that boy? I will tell you. I see a boy that could have had everything, but fell just a bit short. I see a boy who not 9 months ago was almost killed, who almost died, Boston. She paused as her voice broke, but was almost instantly off again. Now I see a boy who, despite losing almost everything, his family, his friends, his literal self-image, even his memories, I see a boy who smiles. Yes, he smiles. Monson Grey maintains a kind and loving demeanor, neither judging nor detesting. He's overtly simplistic in his thoughts, and quick to anger, but it's always accompanied with a sense of love and justice that warms the heart. All this causes me to sit and wonder what he really thinks and feels. What kind of pain does he have that he hides away? I wonder all this because I know the secret horrors that can visit you in the night. Cyan's gaze wandered towards the mirror and her own reflection. I guess I haven't really answered your question, have I? You wanted to know what I see in him. I see a boy who is really a man. One of the strongest I have ever met. That doesn't explain why all of a sudden you stopped spending time with him or why you started in the first place. Nor does it shed any light on the real reason you're with the diamond. Boston seemed unable to contain himself. It all has to do with the brat, doesn't it? So tell me this, if he's so strong and you admire him so much, why isn't he here? You would think you would want to share your dance with someone like him. So answer me this, Cyan. Why the sudden change? Cyan actually let out a laugh this time. Monson had heard it before and it made him cringe. He felt the cruel, mocking edge. Why isn't he here? You mean, besides the obvious? Boston held his tongue. It was apparent that he did not know what the obvious was. Monson probably doesn't dance, Boston. I couldn't ask him to help me with this, and we all know how rhythmically challenged Damien is. I did what I had to do. I had to pick someone I knew that could dance and wouldn't be afraid of me. I would have thought that was plain to see. Boston flushed at her words. It was apparent he was picturing something more dramatic. He seemed to wrestle with her implications. Then, narrowing his eyes again, he said, Okay, I'll give you that. But what about the other stuff? You haven't answered any of those questions. I don't know what it is you're thinking, Boston. but you're obviously envisioning something much more mysterious than the truth. Look, we became friends by accident. Really. It was because my sister thought he was interesting and I wanted to be with her.
Boston looked skeptical, as if he did not believe her answer. She raised her brow in question.
You don't believe me? No, I don't suppose you do, as it's not the absolute truth, and I've never been a very good liar.
She studied his face.
I finally decided that it was time to step out. I thought that if he can experience everything that has happened to him and still smile, then maybe I should try a little harder. He gave me some advice on how to do so. We aren't as close because I was asked to leave him alone by someone whose position I have to respect. Because I know he would do the same.
You're right. You aren't a very good liar. Cyan hesitated for a second, while her head twisted upward in a strange gesture. For the first time, she looked ruffled. Finally, she answered,
He's not here because he scares me.
Boston looked like he wanted to ask more, but Cyan turned from him. Monson could now see her face. He was not sure why, as there was not any change in the light. Perhaps he was trying a bit harder. At that very moment, Cyan looked so much like a girl to him. It made him struggle with the implications. He did not want to say that she looked weak, because that was not the word. It was more like vulnerable or fragmented. He wondered what she thought, thinks, would be thinking. He just wondered. Cyan and Boston both returned to their starting positions for the dance.
What?
Monson marveled, utterly confused. What a trip. Seriously, he did not know whether to be happy or sad. Cyan's words just kept repeating in his head, and he did not know what to think of them. It sounded like she cared for him, but was afraid. Afraid? Afraid of what? What could he have possibly done to make her afraid? He answered his own question with 2 words. Barty Brinch. Could Cyan know how dangerous he was? Maybe that was it. He shook his head. Something about that statement missed the mark. She obviously did not know before all this had happened. Cyan would not want to be around someone like him if she had known what he had done. What then? What was she scared of? Monson switched gears, focusing on the second revelation. Who had asked Cyan to stay away from him? Someone whose position she has to respect? What does that even mean? Who and what position? He thought. What did they know to even have asked her to leave me alone? He looked at Casey and Notorious, their own confusion written across their faces. Your guess is as good as mine, bro. Casey stared across the room to Cyan, who was going into the beginning parts of her routine. Dude, I'm just as confused as you are. She isn't making any sense at all. Well, except the part about Indigo and you. That was pretty obvious. I just don't get it. Casey quickly put a finger up to his lips. Monson nodded. After weeks of wondering and trying to reconcile, he finally knew why Cyan was not talking to him, but he was not any closer to understanding the why. A particularly loud boom of music interrupted the conversation. The two finished the piece this time from beginning to end, though the ending portion was only slightly less shaky. This time was different from before. The dance had suffered as neither Cyan nor Boston were as sharp, and their emotional connection was even smaller than before. Those changes made a real difference in the quality of the performance. Monson was having his own problems. For him, it was like Cyan's words had stripped away a portion of his consciousness, exposing the raw part of his psyche that he neither comprehended nor wanted to comprehend.
He felt like his inner being was suddenly naked, on display for everyone to see. Was he someone to be feared? Was this your average idiotic high school drama, or something more real, more sinister? He had to ask that question, especially in light of all he had experienced recently. He must at least consider the possibility that Cyan had known all along. He watched her closely, noting her every turn, her every contour. He wondered idly if there was anything that could help him understand the conundrum that was Cyan Harrison.
Monson, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Before either Casey or Artorius could inquire further, the music ended. Boston spoke up. Why don't we call it for this morning? Yeah, okay. Meet me here this afternoon. Boston made to walk to the corner to gather his stuff when... Boston? Yes? One more thing. What's that? It would irritate me a great deal if anyone was to hear about what we discussed. Really irritate. Her voice was as calm as ever, but was cold. Very cold. Don't worry, Cyan. Boston bounced on his feet, recovering from his bout of humility. Your secret is safe with me. Good. After a few minutes of gathering personal items and organizing themselves, both Cyan and Boston left. Not really together, but not exactly apart either. Casey, Monson, and Artorius remained stationary, just in case they came back. They waited for more than 5 minutes, finally speaking only when they were sure that the two were truly gone. Casey rounded on Monson despite making it very clear that he was unsure what to say.
Dude, you're quite the enigma, Grey.
Why do you say that?
Cyan and Taurus? If it's not one, it's both? I've never seen such an odd love triangle.
Monson's incredulity boiled from within, but fizzled, taking an abrupt turn. He started to laugh. And it was a while before he stopped. His thoughts meandered. Love triangle? He thought. Yeah, right, Casey. It's so not like that. Without warning, he stood and rushed towards the stairs. He entered the hallway, followed closely by Casey and Artorius. They moved slowly through the halls in silence, each of them wrapped in their own contemplation, all thoughts of sparring forgotten. It was some time before Artorius broke the stillness.
Grey, what did you do?
Monson knew immediately what he was referring to. Cyan. Never had he seen nor heard her say anything like that. The cool, calm expression had been so shaken, while her movements seemed so honest and reflective. There was a story in those movements and words, a story that only she knew. What do you mean?
Seriously? Cyan Harrison, scared?
Casey sighed in a thoroughly ingenuous way.
Dude, what would it take to bottle your mojo and sell it to all the lonely men out there?
Monson rolled his eyes.
Did you know about the...
Artorius struggled to find the word, instead opting to put his hands up daintily, indicating the dancing. I had no idea. Monson shook his head. I didn't even know that Cyan danced, let alone that she was good.
It was probably for a showcase. It's interesting that she would choose dance as a part of it.
What showcase? Artorius stumbled, almost tripping over some of the junk in the hall.
The Royal Showcase.
Casey rolled his eyes as he looked at the two of them.
All the Queen candidates have to put on a talent show at the dance. It's part of the selection process.
Sounds like some sort of beauty contest.
Pretty much.
Wait, you're not kidding? Why on earth would they do that?
I know, a terrible travesty.
Casey matched Monson's tone.
Now, if I was going to have a beauty contest, At least I'd do it properly and have a swimsuit competition. Best flippin' part. Monson's laughter flared up again. It made him slightly lightheaded. Artorius looked very pleased at the thought of a swimsuit contest. Casey merely smiled. The boys continued to walk around the GM's outer halls for a time. It would be at least an hour until the kitchens opened and breakfast served. Finally, they decided to go and lounge in the inner gardens. It was a beautiful day as only Washington State could deliver. Spring had definitely come. Constant rain provided for lush greens and invigorated earth, which gave off the impression of new life. Though the gloom of the seemingly unending rain could get depressing, it made it all the better when the sun did come out. Today was such a day. The sky was clear, clearer than Monson had seen in a long time. It was also warm and surprisingly dry. The three boys settled behind one of the bush hedges that lined the walkway, which were tall enough that they could sit right off the path and not be seen. Monson laid down on the grass, not inclined much to conversation. He placed an arm across his eyes and felt himself sink as soft turf cradled his weary body. The lack of sleep was catching up with him. He could feel it. The spring air pranced around them, the breeze whistling as it passed through the brush wall. Monson could hear Artorius and Casey whispering in docile tones, too low for him to know exactly what they were saying. He adjusted his shoulders and back, again breathing deeply as his body finally found its groove and relaxed, allowing the gentle sounds of the outdoors to envelop him. Interestingly enough, Monson knew a relaxed body was often the scene of a troubled mind. He tried to quiet his thoughts, but every time he thrust one subject from his consciousness, another appeared ready and eager to take its place. Finally, he gave in, allowing pictures, words, and analysis to rush in, bursting in an absolute cacophony of color, sound, and reflection. Taurus and Cyan, magic and memory, power and prophecy, knowledge and control. Every subject assaulted him, cycling through his mind's eye, each as incomprehensible as the last, and just as frustrating as the first. The emotions lurched as he began to sink deeper and deeper into his consciousness. He started to see his memories play before his eyes as if a movie reel had flipped on in his head. He saw a mountain of reddish hair flicker as a small hand caught his. The grip of that hand was peculiar. It almost did not feel like a hand at all, but an instrument or tool. He sensed the tool's precision and efficiency. He felt the act, an act that had purpose and ends. Yet to ascertain and understand what those ends and purpose may be was a leap that could not be taken. Next he saw the graceful steps of a dark-haired, raven-eyed figure, wrapped in the rented fabric of enigma. She moved with articulated fluidity, as if the floor, air, and everything around her moved, changed, or otherwise transformed, just for her. The picture waved once more, and Monson was faced with an image of himself. But this too was not as it seemed. The image sat disjointed and raw, its base features assembled from different sources. It made him think of a collage, composed from the cut-and-paste conglomeration of hundreds of other images. Monson felt weakened at the sight of this person, who he knew was him. Despair crept over him, starting to tighten its grip. Why was the only question that he could ask. Though the feeling intensified, he was finally able to articulate what he felt. He was bound and gagged. But more than that, the overwhelming certainty of his own powerlessness felt like it was going to dominate him. Perhaps forever. He had fallen too deep and was trying to push too hard. He struggled to rip himself from the contemplation, but found that his shackles bound him too tight to resist. "Artorius, Casey, help me."
he screamed in his mind. More images sprang up. Faces of friends and family this time, and a projection of the future. A future of a life not yet lived. No, he was not going down like that. He had survived too much, and had too much to look forward to just to fall now of all times. He gathered his strength to fight. Wait. What was that? A strange light. A warm and inviting flicker appeared on his mental horizon. It was small and indistinct, but it was enough. He felt his fetters start to loosen as the light slowly grew. With a sudden lash of resolve, Monson threw them off entirely. Now freed, he felt himself wander, almost negligently through the strange light, not knowing the reason for his ease and fascination. What was he doing? After all he had been through, could he really follow through with this? Was he about to fall into a more desperate situation? He did not know what to think, but knew that he could not stop himself. He had to move. Monson almost buckled as pressure built up and began to press upon him. He felt something in that pressure, but there was no description available. Something clicked, and Monson instantly recognized the feeling of a consciousness so old and so massive, time itself seemed to be lost in it. Monson felt a change in physical location and remembered his experience with the journal only days ago. Nevertheless, this change was slower, the surfaces and scenery bubbling and blurring as a boiling pot of water. After either a moment or a lifetime, he found himself on a crag of an unknown mountain, high above a range stretching into the distance. There was nothing familiar about the place. The land was desolate, barren, and cold, made even more foreboding by the constant crackle and boom of lightning-filled clouds. There were sensations also, sensations of the wind in its dry prickle, the rain with its soothing mist, the earth's solid musk, and the scorch of fire with its overpowering heat. The feelings and sensations were a part of him, essential to him even. But why? What was he seeing? There was never enough time to ponder these things. This overload of sight and sound paled in comparison, however, to the being now standing in front of him. A woman of ethereal beauty, delicate as a spring lily, but real as the earthen rock he stood upon, riveted his attention. She was awe-inspiring, with silver eyes and silver hair, where words like glimmer or shimmer hardly described her brightness and refinement. Monson instantly recognized the goddess-like creature. "Soraya," he said aloud. Soraya moved forward, though he could not really call it walking, because it did not appear that she was actually touching the ground. She drifted towards a peak that seemed to be the natural accent and focus of the strange, dark land. Monson called out to her, wanting her attention, but the woman did not seem to be aware of his presence. She shifted in his direction and made visible what previously was not. Soraya held in her hand a blade forged of heaven itself. Basking in the purest of white, the hilt, blade, and drapery glowed with a sort of supernatural radiance. Monson realized that there was nothing that this blade, this power, could not do. He took a closer look. The blade was dripping with crimson. Monson fought the instinct, yes, instinct, to rush to Soraya. Was it hers? Was she hurt? He would kill them. He would kill whoever had hurt her. Soraya spoke unexpectedly.
"Marion, my love. It's... The rest is..."
She fell to her knees, exposing a bandage-covered wound. She took in a sharp breath. "Kel!" An evil laugh barked from all around, a laugh so evil that it seemed to be forged from the devil himself. Monson rushed to Soraya, intending to pull her back. His hands went right through her. He tried again and again with nothing to show for it. "Damn it!" The laugh came a second time. Monson could not help it. He had to look. He glanced over the crag of the cliff. He saw... What did he see? A mint tree? Yes, it was a small mint tree. He could even smell it. The scent was blowing on him. Monson opened his bleary eyes. He jumped as Marie's face came into focus. He sat bolt upright, all tiredness leaving him. Only then did he realize that she had just been blowing on his face, and apparently she used mint toothpaste. "Good morning," she said with a wide smile. "So good you are up. Master Grayson had something he wanted to ask you." Monson turned to see Grayson doubled over in laughter, and he was not the only one. Artorius and Casey had also joined in the fun. They continued for a bit, and Monson decided that whatever he had done, it had not warranted this response. "Jerks. Are you ever going to wake me up in a normal way?" Monson glowered, slightly irritated. "I mean, would it kill you?" Grayson was the quickest to answer. "Why would we do that when you provide us with such entertaining reactions? You people are mean." Grayson ignored him, rather poignantly if Monson did say so himself. "So, what are all y'all doing up so early? I know you ain't doing homework." Casey jumped in before Monson could answer. "Oh, it's nothing like that. We're living vicariously through Gray at the moment. He's in need of emotional support." "Emotional support?" He flashed Monson an inquiring look, but before he could say anything, Casey answered. "Well, you wouldn't think it to look at him, but this guy's actually quite popular with the ladies. I know, right? Who would have thought? Artorius and I are just trying to make sense of it." "Ah, so you did tell him about Taurus." Grayson glanced over at Monson. Again, Casey cut him off. "Actually, I was referring to Cyan, but how do you know about Taurus?" "Cyan?" Grayson ignored Casey's question. "What about Cyan? I thought this was Taurus's show." Everyone gawked stupidly at Monson. "I just realized something." They all looked at Artorius. "Gray, you really piss me off." They all laughed this time. Marie and Grayson settled in the grassy knoll with them after their bouts of merriment. Grayson hated not having information, and the latest run-in with Cyan would be no exception. Casey actually gave the rundown of the morning, as he was not only much better at telling stories, but it gave Monson another chance to let his mind wander. He tried not to let it drift too far. Ultimately, though, his lack of attention led to him popping back to reality halfway into a heated conversation. Marie and Casey seemed to be arguing about something. "I think it is obvious. He just needs to make a decision as to whom," Marie said as she stood next to Grayson. "I don't think it's to that point yet," answered Casey with a little shake of his head. "Besides, the rules of storytelling state that you can never resolve a potential love story too early in the plot, especially if that potential relationship could be crucial later on." "Oh, that is so cliché. You do not know that either of those relationships will be crucial. Why not an early resolution? Then explore how the couple overcomes obstacles together." "No way, that's way too deep for a teenage drama," said Casey, waving his hands. "For something like that to exist, a dramatic past is almost a must, and that would require—" Monson stared as Marie and Casey continued like this for some time. Had he missed something? "What in the world are they talking about?" Monson whispered to Artorius. who was staring at Marie with slack-jawed admiration.
"Casey found a kindred spirit,"
he said, not taking his eyes off the girl.
"Apparently Marie wants to be a novelist."
Oh. Well, that explained it. Casey and Marie's conversation meandered for the better part of an hour. They continued to fervently disagree on the use and purpose of romantic elements in storytelling. Monson wondered, more than once in fact, why could he not have normal friends? Finally, they were interrupted when Artorius asked Grayson,
"So, what's the deal with you two? You aren't, together, are you?"
Grayson, in the middle of drinking, gagged, causing water to come gushing out of his nose and mouth. Everyone else went totally silent. Casey leaned around from the other side of Marie so he could see Artorius and Grayson.
"Arthur, you seriously have no tact."
Casey shook his head with a laugh.
"But now that it's out there, inquiring minds would like to know."
Grayson grimaced. He and Monson glanced at each other. Grayson, in a wordless but very loud nonverbal plea, begged for help. Monson was at a loss.
"Good morning, all,"
interrupted a perky voice. They all turned. Indigo Harrison, Christy Wayne, and Ignace Ikeko walked towards the group, coming up from the direction of the field. They were all wearing warm-ups and carrying large backpacks. Marie, who plainly did not appreciate the interruption, gave Indigo and the others a sharp look. Surprisingly enough, Artorius also looked upset. Indigo slid in next to Monson.
"Fancy running into you all here. We have something for each of you."
Indigo popped the bag off her shoulder and pulled out several small boxes, handing one to each of them, except Marie.
"A gift from Miss Blake."
Indigo beamed.
"Check it out."
They all opened their individual packages. Monson tried to appear surprised. One of the dolls that he almost broke in Miss Blake's room sat heavily in his hand. Before he could ask, Christy spotted Casey.
"Casey, I've been looking all over for you."
Christy rushed over to him, throwing her arms around his waist as she started to whine.
"Where have you been all morning?"
"All morning? It's barely past 7. What are you talking about all morning?"
Christy pouted exaggeratedly.
"Someone doesn't pay attention to their phone."
Casey rolled his eyes and tried to re-engage Artorius, Marie, anyone in conversation. This was proving to be quite a feat, however, as Christy was still all over him. Marie was back standing next to Grayson, who shifted uncomfortably. Monson did not envy Grayson, as he could actually feel Marie's anger. He made a mental note not to trifle with her. He looked at Indigo.
"So, what's with the dolls?"
"Apparently it's a project from Barty."
She gazed at the figurine held tightly in Monson's hand.
"He's opening a new art gallery in Seattle, one of the biggest in the world, and Miss Blake is one of his up-and-coming artists."
More than an acceptable answer. Barty seemed like the type that would do something jaunty like that. But then why was Miss Blake giving them her work? They carried on walking to the GM, Casey dodging Christie's vain attempts at physical displays of affection, Artorius, Indigo, and Ignace meandering behind them, giggling in stride, while Grayson and Marie continued to move in silence, hardly looking at one another. Monson just laughed to himself. He really did have some good friends. All of them were so different, but so similar at the same time. It almost made it hard to reconcile the different people they had been and were becoming. The group continued until they reached the GM. Having walked a little faster than the others, Monson arrived first and opened the doors.
"What are you looking so serious about?"
Monson turned as Indigo caught up with him. She tossed her head a bit as she pulled at the hairband around her wrist.
"So, you didn't tell me that you and your groupies have taken to spying."
"Spying? What are you talking?"
Then, He understood.
Arthur!
He glared back at Artorius, who was deep in conversation with Ignace. Artorius turned his head towards Monson.
Yeah, Grey? What can I...
He stopped, as he noticed Monson's expression.
I'm sorry. It couldn't be helped. Her feminine wiles, Grey. She ensnared me. I didn't have a choice.
You didn't have a choice? You didn't have a choice? How could you not have had a choice? What if she tells her sister, moron? Artorius launched to look towards Indigo, who was wearing a sly grin.
You wouldn't tell her, would you?
He said, pleading.
I mean, we didn't mean to spy. We were just there, and she happened to be having a conversation about Grey, while that crackhead Boston was trying to get his game on with.
Boston? Snapped a voice, slicing across Artorius's babbling explanation. Boston Timberland? It was Christy, and she looked pissed. Artorius, taken aback by her sudden manner, answered timidly.
Yeah. Why?
And with whom was he trying to get his game on? Artorius quailed under the girl's furious look. Then, almost shyly, he gestured towards Indigo. Christy spun on the spot. Whoa there, settle down, Christy. Indigo said quickly, understanding Artorius's implication. It's not me. I totally swear it's not me. This was going downhill, and fast. There was a connection. Boston and Christy had been involved. That was the only possible conclusion. Monson remembered what Boston had said earlier that day. Something that made him cringe. And now that I've taken care of my little obligation, thought Monson. That's what he had been referring to. Oh, poor Christy. Christy and Indigo, followed closely by Ignace, left not long after that, leaving Monson and the others in their wake. Talk about livid. Monson had never seen a girl as angry as Christy Wayne was in the seconds before she left. He suddenly felt sorry for Boston. Then again, Boston probably deserved anything he got. The group, minus Indigo and her friends, continued into the main cafeteria. All of them, except Marie, who thought it was inappropriate, sat in a far corner, eating in relative silence, each wrapped in their own issues. It was not until they were leaving that Casey, who had come to the same conclusion as Monson about the whole Boston Christie thing, started commenting in shocked tones.
I just don't understand,
he said as they exited out of the GM's main doors and headed back to the dorms.
So dramatic. Why do people have to be like that?
Casey looked like he was really mulling the whole thing over in his head. So much so, he did not see the person come up just behind them. Casey stumbled as a sidekick hit him. It must have been a whopper, too, packed with enough force to cause Casey, the master martial artist, to fall. Monson and the others took a step back. Casey glanced upward, looking enraged. All of that boiling emotion came to a screeching halt, however, as he realized just who had kicked him.